Hey everybody, welcome to Improv FAQ. I'm James Quesada, and in this episode, we're going to talk about the line between grounded improv and when it gets to be to the point where it's boring. So when we talk about doing grounded improv, we're usually associating that with realistic acting, realistic characters in a realistic world, and having emotional integrity and all sorts of really good things being present in your scene work. However, when you're working on those things, and this is definitely something that I experienced, you can run into this point where you're saying to yourself, well, I'm doing what I feel is grounded scene work and a decent acting job and committing to my characters, but the scene just feels mundane or boring. So what do I do? So one really helpful concept for these situations is going to be juxtaposition, which is the idea of having unlike or contrasting things butted up against each other. And the way this is used in comedy is often the way that we might refer to it is having ordinary people or characters in extraordinary situations, or having extraordinary people and characters in ordinary situations. And that can really be a nice way to think about how to keep things grounded, because it doesn't always have to be about the characters in your scene being realistic and behaving realistically. It's just about having both levels going on, so that if the more unrealistic one thing gets, the more realistic the other side of it tends to have to be in order to keep it grounded and have as much fun as you're hoping to have with the unrealistic or ungrounded thing. And so that might mean having regular, normal people, close to self characters that are discovering alien artifacts, or it might be dragons, but they're dragons who have to do their taxes and pay their bills. Just having two sides of it. And it doesn't really matter which element is the extraordinary thing or the ordinary thing, but it can be really helpful to have both at play with each other. And for me personally, there's an exercise or a concept that I keep in my head that I like to call metal detector. And this is the idea that if I find myself in a scene that feels really grounded and realistic and high integrity, but it's feeling mundane and there isn't fun or comedy happening there, what I will look to do is this is going to put you in your head, but taking a quick inventory of everything that's been established so far and what we don't know, and then looking for a way to exploit that context. So, if you're in a scene and you have established, or you have two characters that are treating each other like, oh, another day at the office, but we haven't really said where we work, you might be able to exploit that missing information by taking these ordinary characters and putting them in an extraordinary situation. Like, say that they're working in the bowels of hell, and that it's being treated as if it's another day in the cubicles of some corporate office. And the reason I call it metal detector in my head is because when I recognize that that is going on, I want to keep all the same integrity and grounded realism that we've established at the beginning moments of the scene, and carry that on once the extraordinary thing gets established. So just because I see it happening and I'm like, oh, we're working in the bowels of hell, I don't want that to derail or come off as jokey or punchy or sacrificing everything we have going on for a laugh. I want to find a way to introduce or establish that information in a way that feels natural and is filtered through all the integrity that we have going on so far in the scene. And if I can do that, I feel like I've gotten through the metal detector without having it go off. And as a disclaimer, I'll just say that the idea of metal detector is really, it's more of a back pocket tool than an overall philosophy, because you don't always want to be thinking of ways to throw in curveballs or have surprise reveals in every single scene. It can just be helpful in those rare circumstances where you're doing all the good things about grounded improv, but it's just not taken off for whatever reason, nothing sparking. And it could be a helpful tool here and there to help get you past that metal detector and into that world of fun on the other side. Another helpful tip to keep in mind if you're in these really grounded situations is that it's up to you to find things to focus on. And if what you're running into is that it just feels mundane and subdued, that the energy of the scene is just kind of like lukewarm, it's up to you to choose to make a big deal out of something in the scene. Something that your partner says, something that is implied, that comes up. You can make a big deal out of anything you want, and that can immediately give a boost of energy to the scene. And again, use the reality and the integrity of the scene that you have established so far. Take these real characters and aim really heightened emotion at something that maybe doesn't make sense to be so emotionally worked up about, some small detail that we wouldn't expect someone to freak out or get super invested in. You can choose to freak out or get super invested in those little things. That's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments if you have any follow-up questions or your own experiences related to aiming for grounded improv, but ending up struggling with whether or not it's boring. And let me know if you have suggestions for other questions that you'd like to have answered on Improv FAQ.